Well. After months of waiting, it appears that we're finally here. The last playtest for the Unreal Engine 5 upgrade to Squad. But before we actually talk about it, I do feel like I have to address something because the whole discourse around this update and UE5 in general has just been really annoying to try and pay attention to over the last few months. I don't know who needs to hear this, but Unreal Engine 5 is as good or as bad as a game engine as the people who are developing the games on it are. Satisfactory, a game that is currently sitting at overwhelmingly positive with over 200,000 reviews, is made in Unreal Engine 5. In fact, it was just like Squad, where it was UE4 and then transitioned to UE5 just a couple years ago. The finals, whether or not you actually like the gameplay, has some of the craziest destruction mechanics I've seen in any game, and it's made in Unreal Engine 5. You can literally blow up the entire map, stare at it, and not a single hitch or performance issue. And if we completely change genres, Black Myth Wukong, which some people have had as their game of the year, is made in Unreal Engine 5. Do you see what I'm getting at here? The whole point of Unreal Engine 5 is to give developers new tools that they didn't have before with UE4. Now, yes, that does mean that these developers can completely screw up games with these tools because the game looks beautiful without any tweaking, but most of the time, developers who actually know what they're doing can use these new tools, tweak them for themselves, and this results in very fun and performant games. Of course, there are issues with Unreal Engine 5, just like there are issues with Unreal Engine 4 and Unity and Godot and every other custom-built game engine out there, but to completely disregard an engine upgrade because you just don't understand how it works and you just want to keep repeating UE5 bad and new graphic slop and all this stuff, that's just dumb, okay? Over the past few playtests, I've been more than happy to admit that I've had some performance issues and I have seen some bugs, but I'm not sure if I've really talked to y'all about how I'm feeling about the update since the very first one. So today, we're going to talk about how this last version of the game felt because apparently, whether we like it or not, this is the last playtest. And this wasn't just a surprise to you, this was a surprise to me too. Apparently, we're going to be getting an update soon, TM, so fingers crossed that this last playtest was a good one. Now, after playing the playtest for a couple days until the servers just died out, I have to say this first. I'm not going to focus on the bugs, okay? I personally didn't see too many bugs outside of the black screen ADS overlay when I tried using the performance option for the picture-in-picture optics, but I do know that there were plenty of people who ran into quite a lot of weird problems during this playtest. There were collision issues on some maps, apparently healing or reviving kinda didn't work at times, weird clicks or reloads, vehicle optics could be offset or maybe even shaking and stuttering, there were audio bugs with the radio filters, and your audio channels would not save, meaning that if you kept trying to split it between left and right, it just wouldn't work. Okay, there were a lot of bugs, all right? I'm not saying there weren't any bugs. Take a look at the Squad Reddit or on Discord and you'll see plenty of people complaining, and they should. These were bugs that were bothersome and annoying. There are weird bugs here, and I know some people want to absolutely dunk on the devs for this. I don't really want to, okay? That's the whole point of these playtests, to see what's broken and to fix it, to see the bugs and to fix it. I think it's really lame to just focus on all these bugs when those just kind of come with the territory of upgrading engines from UE4 to UE5. It isn't just copy-paste from a developer standpoint. Some things have to be completely rewritten and rebuilt with new logic and new blueprints. So there are going to be some things that are just genuinely broken. I don't care about that. I don't know if I'm wrong for saying that I don't care about that. I'm wrong for like ignoring bugs, I guess. But let me tell you why. Honestly, those bugs don't matter, all right? A hotfix is going to come out to make it so players can't run through some random wall in Belia, all right? Or they're going to adjust that weapon optic half an inch to the left so it's lined up properly. Those are so easy to fix, but what is harder to fix is fixing optimization and performance issues. So many people have been complaining about how buggy this playtest is, and then when followed up by saying, oh, how's the performance? They say, oh, well, yeah, I mean, performance was good, but like the bugs. Like, Okay, the bugs will be fixed, but performance and optimization are the big changes that are going to make or break Squad when it moves to UE5. Nobody is going to uninstall and refund the game if some radio filter isn't working right for 24 hours. I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on performance. I want to focus on ADS transitions, picture-in-picture optics. I want to focus on what is going to matter. So with that being said, we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and a little bit of the weird, because I don't even know what this is. Is this a cloud? Yeah, apparently there's clouds on Korra now. So in order to get the best testing, I had a completely fresh install of the Squad playtest branch. I didn't play around with my graphics at all. I just jumped into a game of Squad and tried to see how it felt with everything defaulted. The first map, however, was actually incredibly disappointing. I first joined into Sanxian as a PLA, and I'm not sure if this is because of all the foliage and the shadows or something, but I was getting about the same FPS as I would in UE4 Squad, with a lot of drops that were way lower. I get peaks of up to 100 FPS at times, but on average, I felt like I was sitting around 60-ish, maybe low 70s, with constant drops into the 50s. And if I had to ADS, then the picture-in-picture optics would drop this another 10 or 15 FPS. So 50 to 40, it wasn't a very performant experience. It felt like the game was hitching every time I raised my weapon, and it just wasn't a fun time. If I was using a red dot or AT weapon, basically anything that didn't have those pip optics, it was a decent experience. I wouldn't say it was completely smooth, but if I didn't have the FPS counter on, I probably wouldn't have noticed the FPS drops most of the time. Either way, after hearing about so much performance improvements, I was very disappointed in Sanxian, and that was not a good way to start. However, swapping to Yeho made this experience far better, with stable FPS closer to 80 or 90, with drops with a lot of action or foliage to 60 and 70. Now, when I fought in the towns around the map, it actually wasn't uncommon to have a stable FPS over 100. So the default graphics setting I was given just from the install actually made urban combat very fun, very smooth, and very performant. It seemed like the performance issues I was having was anytime I ran into foliage around the map. Dense forest, bushes, anything like that caused a lot of drops, which I'm guessing is due to all of the shadows. And this was confirmed when we swapped to Fallujah. Now, Fallujah is probably the most asset-dense map in the game, but not only did it look beautiful with UE5, but I was constantly getting over 100 FPS. Yeah, I was shocked. I'm not gonna lie, I had no expectations, and 100 FPS was insane. There were some weird spots in the map where I would drop, but it seemed more like there was almost like a hole, like a 5 by 5 foot area I would run past. It would tank the FPS and then immediately cover when I walked out of this little circle. But like 99% of the time, I was sitting at over 100 FPS, easily 110, 115. This was amazing. It felt good. It looked good. But once again, the FPS drop while ADSing with the pip scopes was very jarring. It's funny, although earlier I was getting 40 FPS with the pip optics on Sanxian, it didn't feel nearly as bad because my overall FPS on that map was like 50. So a 10 FPS drop from 50 to 40 doesn't actually seem like it's changing at all. But on Fallujah, going from 113 FPS down to 89 is very jarring, and it constantly felt like the game was chugging whenever I had that transition to use my optics. Now, during editing, as I've reviewed the footage, the only time that I really dropped FPS on Fallujah was when I was staring at the radio bleed out effect and was also getting shot at the same time. So to me, that says overlays where your screen would darken or you'd get suppressed, those post-processing effects, those do give you some performance issues, but really the only time I actually noticed this was while editing and I saw the little FPS counter. And that means that for most players, most of the time, and seriously, like 99% of the time, you're not going to feel a thing. It feels smooth, it looks great. I was honestly shocked at how performant it is. I have a Ryzen 7 7950X3D and an RTX 4080 graphics card. It's a pretty decent rig, okay? And this was again with epic and high settings on pretty much everything. I just wanted to get a good baseline. I didn't have FrameGen on. I did have NVIDIA DLSS on with DLAA, and everything else was just default, whatever the game gave me. For most rounds, I feel like I could have just installed the game, pressed play, and if I didn't have an FPS counter up, I wouldn't have felt like there was any issue at all. FPS felt stable, usually higher than 80 FPS when looking during editing, and I consistently had long periods of gaming with higher than 100 FPS. If I didn't turn that stat FPS counter on, the only map I may have had noticeable problems with was Sunshine. It didn't feel good at times and did chug a bit, but everything else, including what I thought was going to be the problem map in Fallujah, was fine and I couldn't stop playing. It was fun and the game looked great, even when there was a lot of things happening on very big maps. Infantry, vehicles, smoke, explosions, command call-ins. It was fun. Sue me, I had fun and my computer didn't overheat and burn down. Now, after these initial games, I spent like 2 hours tweaking a setting, running around staring at something, tweaking a setting again, staring at something else, shooting. I did a lot of testing just trying to do individual settings to see what worked and what didn't. But full disclosure, by the time I got around to this, there were only about 40 or 50 players in the server. The playtest was kind of winding down, so it was a live server with real people in it, but it wasn't the 100-player servers with a lot of stuff going on as I did earlier. So maybe a little asterisk here, but I've got to say it was incredible. After spending hours literally going through my settings and tweaking them, I had so much fun walking around the map and seeing the FPS. With frame gen on, optimal DLLA sharpening, medium shadows, high texture quality, the map went to Cora, and I know it is a smaller map, but I had 120 FPS easy. Even when I went to the middle of the map with a lot of infantry in the front line, I was driving a vehicle and I got shot out of that vehicle, I still had above 100 FPS while it happened. So I don't want to lie to you and say the performance is good and have no evidence to back it up. You can look through the footage here and also look at others' performance on Reddit and Discord, and it seems like the vast majority of people actually did have good performance and actually enjoyed the game. But I will say that with UE5, it's going to be very dependent on your build and what you need to tweak. The worst offenders I saw were view distance and shadows. Those were extremely costly, so lower your view distance down a bit, put your shadows down to medium, and that alone is going to give you like 20 to 30 FPS. And if you were to then to select less expensive effects like medium or high effects instead of what I use, which is cinematic, lower your post-processing down a little bit, you're probably going to be way more performant than I was. Now, overall, I guess what I'm trying to say is this. I think there are some big performance issues with maps like Sanshin, or perhaps just factions like the PLA, since both the PLA on Sanshin and on Black Coast, I even had my FPS tanked to like 30 or 40 FPS at the main base when a Logi just drove past. So maybe it's actually just the PLA as a faction that isn't optimized instead of maps. But either way, there are some big issues with certain aspects of the game when it comes to performance, but honestly not enough for me to say that I was disappointed or it felt like a downgrade, or that this was even rushed at all. The graphics were overall far better than UE4 Squad, and the majority of my playtime I had high, stable FPS that resulted in a much more enjoyable experience than current Squad. When I spent the time to go over my graphics one by one, I had even less issues. I had practically no hitching at all, and the only notable problem was that drop in frames with ADSing, which I'm hoping they're going to fix. That's a big point that I really hope they focus on. I think that for the majority of the players out there, the performance is in a very good spot, and I am surprised to say that. Do I think it's completely ready for a full release? Maybe not, but I do think it's close enough that hopefully the data collected from last week gives them what they need to improve it. After looking at everything, I really don't think it's reasonable to keep pushing this UE5 bad narrative, and I'm not being paid to say that. In fact, I haven't even been able to play Squad that much recently due to my knee pain while sitting down, so the fact that I was able to play for hours and hours on multiple days this past weekend during the playtest, I was enjoying myself. I never felt like I had to get an excuse to stop playing, like I just kind of played through the pain because I was having so much fun. That actually says a lot. This version of Squad is super fun, and I think people need to chill out a bit. At this point, I almost want to start ignoring people that just blatantly say UE5 bad or UE5 slop, because those people who keep dumping on UE5 for Squad probably are the same people who like Claire Obscure Expedition 33, which is in UE5, or Manor Lords, which is in UE5, or maybe even Split Fiction, which is in UE5. There are so many games in UE5. I am done with the UE5 slander. It's getting old, and every day the argument holds even less water because of all the games that are coming out and performing so well. The last comment I'll say is that if UE5 were to drop tomorrow, the biggest recommendation I could do is to go to a server, stay in the spawn area, and go through your settings and just play around with your shadows, and you'll probably have really good FPS and the game will look beautiful. Squad looks and feels freaking amazing, and I honestly cannot wait until the next update. But what do you guys think? Am I a squad shill? Am I lying? Do you guys also feel the same way? Did you have good games with good performance? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. But that's it for me. Until next time, peace.